As we are rounding out the final week of Black History Month, all month we have been highlighting African-American men and women who have made big impacts, particularly here in Metro Detroit.
And Darnell's back again to introduce us to the man who fought to change police departments in the state.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Really cool story. It's fun doing. This morning we're talking about the change makers when it comes to policing, particularly here in Michigan.
Being first is often looked at as a good thing when it comes to sporting events like a race. But how about when you're the first to break racial barriers? In 1878, the Detroit Police Department hired their very first black officer, John Wilson. According to DPD historian and author of the book, Blacks That Wore Blue, retired Lieutenant Roosevelt Lawrence.
It was a struggle. It was tough.
Officer Wilson only lasted for 4 years before he ultimately resigned from the Detroit Police Department. Lawrence says this is heavily due in part of the fact that when black officers first started, they were given the less favorable assignments that nobody else wanted.
Part of their daily duties, they might walk a beat for 3 hours, but the other 3.5 hours or so, they had to clean up behind the horses. And obviously that wasn't a pleasant job, but it was the job that they did because they knew, they kind of had a vision that this wasn't going to last forever.
DPD still continued to be trailblazers, hiring 4 more officers from 1890 to 1895. With Officer George Carmichael being the very first black officer to retire from DPD after working from 1895 to 1924. It wasn't until 89 years after the Detroit Police Department hired their very first black police officer that the Michigan State Police followed suit, hiring Jack Hall as the first black Michigan State Trooper in 1967.
I was really surprised when I thought I was going to be the first. Really didn't mean much. I just wanted to be a good police officer.
Detroit Police Chief James White, who started his career with the Detroit Police Department in 1996, says diversity and hiring blacks is very important.
We are a predominantly African-American city, and we have to reflect the community in which we serve. And so we aggressively try to recruit officers from our community. Our strength is our diversity.
Chief White credits Detroit's first black mayor with being bold enough to continue to break barriers.
Coleman Young did an amazing job by hiring the first black police chief in the city of Detroit and recognizing the importance of diversity and giving people like me an opportunity over the years, and I will forever be honored and humbled by that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Chief White is proud of all the work done by the men and women of the Detroit Police Department, but certainly recognizes the importance of the black police officers who have come before him and what they have meant, not just to policing here in Michigan, but in improving police and community relations throughout this country. And I'm also a product of that. I recognize that too. I mean, I started my career in 1994, but yet and still, you know, you got to pay homage to the people who came before you and open those doors.
That was eye-opening that the first black state police officer was only 57 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a little discouraging, although, and then you think of how many black police chiefs we've had in Detroit.
Yeah.
That's encouraging, so.
Yeah.